Alright, so I'm a little bit sick today, guys, so if my voice sounds weird or something along the lines of that's going on, I'm sorry about that. But this is kind of a follow-up video to my video problem with speed. I'll have it linked in the cards, but this is a standalone video, so you don't need to watch it if you don't want to, but you can if you want. But anyway, when I made that original video about the problem with speed, I got a lot of criticism because of it. And I don't think I did probably the best job of communicating that video about the problems with speed in my opinion. And I really had only experienced it from the bounty hunting side, so I decided to become a criminal to see how bad I could abuse the system to my advantage, and to see maybe if there was the people who criticized me could have a point. And if they did, maybe I was just doing bounty wrong this whole time, and I'd pick up some tips on how to be a better bounty hunter myself, which would be fun. Now, there are a lot of things that you can do to abuse the system as a criminal, so I decided not to abuse them, so I'm not going to be backspacing the Grim Hex during this whole, or I didn't backspace the Grim Hex during this whole time. I didn't do any combat logging. I didn't go to any planetary armistice zones after I'd been attacked, and all I did was rely on the excessive speed in the game and my skills as a pilot. And I spent most of my time in a Gladius unless I had a friend on who wanted to do some criminal missions with me, and then we'd take out a Hurricane or a Constellation. Andromeda a couple times, but 90% of the time I was solo in a Gladius. And I played for on the criminal side for a couple weeks. I went to jail a few times and escaped a few times, kept the crime streak rolling. But here's a little bit of a spoiler alert. Nobody was able to kill me in space. The only time I died in space and went to jail was after I killed a guy. I crashed into an asteroid. That was it. The only time. And the other times I went to jail was when I was doing on-foot missions. So basically, when I did on-foot missions was really the only time I was at risk of dying, whether that was to NPC or players. And when I was in a spaceship, I was completely safe in my experience except for the random asteroid. This wasn't because I'm some kind of ace pilot or anything along those lines. I would consider myself to be very middle of the pack as far as being a combat pilot goes. And I definitely came up against pilots in other situations that I wasn't good enough to handle. But just with the abusing of the excessive speed in the game, I could just leave, and there was nothing that could really threaten me in the game. Like just being able to hit the boost and gas out of any situation, and with there being no counterplay for my opponents to stop me from doing this, it was just like I never felt threatened the whole time while I was in space, even coming up against better pilots or pilots with turret gunners, or even when two people drop in on me. And so basically, I would just play it safe, and anytime I realized I was outmatched for whatever reason, like I said before, better combat pilot, turret gunners, multiple ships, or whatever, I would just abuse the speed in the game and jump away. I had no problem doing this and staying alive for a couple weeks. I even had people try to get me for multiple hours without success. I even got caught in atmosphere a couple times, which you can't just quantum out of. And one of the times, 2 ships dropped in on me at once. And with speed and just boosting away, I was able to get out of the atmosphere and quantum out before 2 ships could even drop my shields. And now, before you all jump into my comments and start being like, the Cuddy Blue, the Mantis, and QT blocking, that fixes the issue, and how all the players that tried to get me are dumb for not using that, I'm here to tell you that in a lot of these situations, they're still like 99.99% useless in the bounty hunting world. And when they are useful, the amount of work that you have to do to make them useful just makes it not worth it. I mean, the QT dampener is pretty much 100% useless. Trying to get anything that's faster or more maneuverable than you are, and being in a Cuddy Blue or a Mantis, that's going to be pretty much any single seat fighter ship. I mean, there are some exceptions to that, of course, but as a general rule, if you come up against the bounty that's flying one of those, your QT dampener is not going to help you at all. And then you're stuck flying a Cuddy to try and take them out. Now, to kind of get into what the Mantis has that is sort of useful, and that's the QT snare. And the reason why this is useful is because it creates a 20-kilometer bubble around you that makes it where they can't use quantum jump in that area. Now, obviously, this is more useful because it's a lot easier to keep a target within 20 kilometers than it is 2 kilometers away. But at the same time, if they're in a faster, smaller single-seat fighter, they could still slowly get away. Like, it's going to take a while and it's going to be super boring. but you are still not able to catch them. But with well planning, like if you got some buddies with like M50s or other racing ships, or like the Avenger Warlock's pretty fast, the Carterall is super fast, some of the faster ships in the game, then you can potentially use that with the Mantis to take down any targets that are slower than you. And with the fastest ships in the game, you'll most likely be able to do that. But the amount of work and time and effort that you'd have to put in to get this to work well, especially like when you're talking about, hey, sometimes the servers don't work, sometimes there's not bounties online. Hey, me and a few of my buddies would have to be online to get this to working, and then somebody's just stuck with the boring task of sending in a Mantis and like hoping the person doesn't realize, oh, I can't really get away, so I have to blow up this Mantis to get out, and hoping that you're a good enough pilot to avoid that at least. It doesn't seem worth all the work or effort that it would take to do that. And honestly, I didn't buy a Mantis to try this with my friends because it sounds like one of the least fun things I could do with my friends on the game, so maybe at some point when I'm super rich and bored of a bunch of other stuff, but honestly, I'd probably use it for piracy rather than bounty hunting at that point. And a target that knows what they're doing and well planned still has a solid chance of getting away from your Mantis, so there's still that to consider. And I do know that QT blockers can be somewhat useful for piracy because most of the ships that you go after as a pirate are not faster or more maneuverable than you, and most of the time they can't get away from you if you're a skilled enough pilot, and you will also have them as outgunned as well, so that you are putting yourself in a very good situation. And the difference between piracy and bounty hunting is when you're bounty hunting someone, the chances that they're in the single seat fighter that's not suitable for this type of gameplay is significantly higher than if you're well, yeah, you can't really, there's not really any single seat fighters with any cargo to do trading or mining with. So it's just a completely different situation of the targets that you're going after, which makes the ships more useful. So they are useful in certain situations, but overall, for bounty hunting at least, like this isn't a good solution to stopping speed. So kind of here's the conclusion, guys. Like, I'm not the best pilot. I'm mediocre. And I didn't abuse any of the jank in the game besides just the excessive amount of speed in the game. And not a single bounty hunter was able to kill me in the space of 2 weeks. An asteroid had more kills on me in space. And I had 20 plus bounty hunters come after me. I earned quite a few million AUC. And there's probably quite a few bounty hunters that I didn't even notice. I know one guy for sure. I barely even noticed him when I dipped out to the next mission. So, and in all that time, I did not see a single Cuddy Blue or a Mantis try to do any of these tricks. Probably because the investment to do something like that is so high, and it's just not effective or realistic for most people to do. But I could see how the Mantis, if you really wanted to invest all that time and effort into it, could potentially be useful. And this is really only a deep dive into one thing that the problem of speed causes in this game. But here's kind of an overview of some other issues that I see. And the first one of these is, as long as you know what you're doing, you can basically just bail out of any bad situation and get your shields back. And it allows there to be no high intensity moments fighting NPCs. It allows for much fewer high intensity moments fighting players. And like, I get that, hey, I could just stay in the fight and have that high intensity moment, or sometimes I get too greedy and I die to an NPC or whatever. But at the same time, if I just feel like playing safe, I can pretty much come out of any situation unscathed and without much trouble. Like when I had a crime stat of 5, and I'm not sure if this is supposed to happen or if it glitched and just kept on spawning stuff in. But I had 6 or 7 mantises spawn and QT snare me after doing one of the missions, and there's like 25 or more NPC ships. I didn't have time to count them, but I was basically able just to take out 6 or 7 of the mantises just by jumping in and jumping out, or boosting in, boosting out every time I took one out without too much trouble. It wasn't high intensity, even though there was like 25 ships trying to kill me, and quite a few of them were the F8 Lightnings. It felt like the entire Navy was after me, but I was able just to ignore most of them, abuse the speed mechanic to its fullest, and do hit and run strategies, take out 6 or 7 ships. Basically, what I'm saying is you can almost just take on the entire Navy without much of a problem just by abusing the speed mechanic. and that was the most intense situation I've probably been in the game from NPCs, and I was very easily able to make it not very intense and just kind of more of an annoying thing where it's like, oh, my shields are getting low, I gotta get out of here. Oh, my shields are back, let's jump back in and try to take on another mantis. Oh, my shields are low again. Another thing about it is fighting someone who isn't a great pilot and who is just stomping on this, like, the forward thrust isn't fun because it turns into like them just jousting you and overshooting you by like 2 kilometers every single time, and then coming back. And with how fast shields start to recharge, it's basically like they just keep on getting their shields back. And I know as I become a better pilot, there's things that you can do to kind of control other people's speeds, but to have the barrier of entry to have fun in a combat skill in this game high to the point where it's not intuitive for most people to kind of just start figuring it out on their own is really kind of sucks. This is editor me coming in to kind of clarify this point a little bit. But what I'm talking about when I'm talking about a high barrier to entry, like Star Wars Squadrons is a good example because you can jump in there and after you kind of figure out how to fly and learn a couple things, you can really have a very engaging combat experience even at a fairly beginner level, and I think that's lacking from Star Citizen. I feel like one of the reasons that is speed. Also, just kind of in general, a big issue is high speed combat is less fun than the slower speed combat. And this is all on top of the issue that the higher speed combat is, the more rubber banding and desync there is in the game. So by going 1,000 meters per second, flying through the air versus like what 200 to 300, there's just going to be a lot more desync and servers and not being able to keep up and rubber banding and stuff like that. So even after this experiment and testing out more situations, my opinion hasn't changed. So I think what's happened with people telling me about the Cuddy Blue and the Mantis and how the QT blocking and stuff like that is, in that original video I was talking about how I wanted to counterplay to speed, and they looked at it like, oh, these systems are in the game, that should fix this problem. When in reality, when you're using it, it's either just doesn't work hardly at all, or the amount of investment to do it is just too high to even make it practical. So that's kind of what I think has happened, is it's just you look at a game without trying it out and it seems like it should work when in reality it just doesn't work very well. But I'm changing my opinion from that speed should have counterplays to it, and I just think it flat out needs to be reduced at this point. I think the fact that there's no intensity in a lot of combat moments just because you always have the chance to escape pretty much, and also with the desync and rubber banding and stuff like that it's causing, and the kind of higher learning curve and stuff like that for getting into combat, because I know speed control is one of my biggest struggles even to this day in this game, and I have quite a few hours in at this point now. So I think it just needs to be flat out reduced, and I think the game overall would be a lot better for that. And here's a little short clip of a video from CIG. It's Yogi talking on their thoughts about speed as well.
So one of the most important aspects we want to change in the future is the problem of high speed. We know that high speed combat doesn't work well, and we also know that low speed combat between 2 and 300 meters per second is incredibly enjoyable. How are we going to resolve that? We don't know yet. We'll see. The next part is...
I guess I could have led with that video, but I think it's more fun this way, and I had a lot of fun testing these out. So if you got criticism, keep them coming. I'm enjoying it. I'm having fun, and thank you all for watching the video. And if you got anything to say about this video, let me know down in the comments. It might spawn a whole nother video. Who knows?